As usual, this is a review of a sequel. If you do not want to be spoiled about the preceding film, go catch it then before coming back again. In Scream 6, the Carpenter sisters did not feel that they were on top of the world yesterday once more, when they moved to the Big Apple, as the threat of the Ghostface killers followed them to New York and came collecting the debt they incurred in Part 5. Many characters were lacerated and skewered more so than a Brazilian barbecue restaurant, yet almost everyone survived, like the immortal Mix Martin twins and our impervious reporter Gil Weathers. In Scream 7, we reconciled with Sidney Prescott, née Evans, as she was happily married to a police chief in a town in Indiana with a teenage daughter, Tatum. Sidney's fame was not to be ignored with those stab movies based on her near-death experiences, and even in Indiana, it was attracting many unwanted attention, and Tatum was affected by association. One day, Sidney received a video call from the deceased Stu Marker, warning her Ghostface killer is coming back into her life, and his prime target would be Tatum. While in modern context, Marker was immaculately created with deepfake technology, Sidney could not let her guards down, especially with the copious number of copycat killers on the prowl in this wretched franchise. The gruesome murder of Tatum's friend during her stage performance rehearsal compounded the urgency for Sidney to alarm her husband to summon the cavalry, and the family will be going on high alert. As you know, the law enforcement in this franchise is as useful as a piece of moist rag, leading to the Evans dodging a ferocious assault from the Ghostface killer before the unkillable trio of Gil and the Mix Martin twins make their unannounced appearances. Scream 7 will focus on how Sidney 2.0, trying to outdo her mother, fending off the unadulterated attacks from multiple copycat Ghostface killers. Like, you'll be surprised that there's more than one of them by this point in the 6th sequel. Meanwhile, Mama Sidney had a transient, heartwarming reunion with Gil before things turned antagonistic at an instance when the hustler got to hustle. There was a protracted chain of events that hindered the production of Scream 7. Neve Campbell was perturbed not to be remunerated properly for her involvement in 6, leading her to be axed by the producers from that movie. Bridges felt like had been burnt from that juncture. This was followed by the Radio Silence directing team bailing out on this sequel due to conflicts in their schedule, and Christopher Landon, who had directed Drop from last year, was poised to take over. Things were in motion when actress Melissa Barrera, who played Samantha Carpenter, tweeted a pro-Palestine comment, leading her to be given the pink slip from the studio. Didn't she know that Hollywood is overrun by a certain ethnicity? How dare her. Soon after that, Jenna Ortega was gone, as well as Christopher Landon, before the studio had to find a man that was instrumental to the success of the franchise. No, there was no spiritual medium that can resurrect Wes Craven. We are talking about the man who wrote the screenplay, Kevin Williamson. Even as I was closing a blind eye about the production of an uncalled for sequel of a reboot that felt underwhelming despite what some fans might have claimed, the topsy-turvy production fracas was definitely more exciting than what transpired on screen, despite the best effort of Williamson and co-writer Guy Busick. It was apparent the two characters that were slightly more endearing from Part 5 and 6 were not returning, and we got those we wanted badly to be killed but refused to be written off. And as of all preceding films, the nostalgia value with Sidney, Gil and Dewey, as well as many who have died as victims of Ghostface or those who have donned the killer garb, were revered so passionately. There was even one scene here that felt epitomizing this sensibility for the Scream series. I could not stop rolling my eyes, and when I saw Scott Foley, I asked myself who he was in the series. The Scream franchise worked on the revelation of the people behind the Ghostface mask, who upon wearing it and the black hood, became indestructible to blunt forces and bullet wounds. Say what you will about Part 5 and 6, the killers had some reasons to don the mask and pick up the dagger. In Scream 7, trust me, you will be so underwhelmed by the revelation, it was time to push the abort button for this franchise. The franchise itself always banked on the main core of young characters. As much as I had long-standing issue with Melissa Barrera's wooden acting in these movies, her chemistry with Ortega worked, and we were starting to warm up to the sisters. Not that Isabel May playing Tatum was awful in her performance, we were always going to compare her to young Campbell, and Sidney's shadow was casting over the entire movie. McKenna Grace was blossoming into an actress that horror fans are starting to pay attention to with those Ghostbusters movie. Her time here lasted even shorter than her cameo in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. At least she had been cast as Daphne in the upcoming Scooby-Doo live-action film. The role of the other Tatum's friends was even more peripheral, and the most memorable part was her being killed. Then we have the suspicious looking boyfriend. He could barely stand in the same room with someone like Billy Loomis. We also have Joan McHale as Sydney's police chief hubby. All I can say was that I like him more in Scott Derrickson's Deliver Us From Evil. At least he did not contract the unkillable syndrome in that movie. I was unsure if Williamson's understanding of contemporary teenagers had failed him, or he had little time to come up with a proper script that worked for this movie. This coming from someone who gave us delightful teenage features like Dawson's Creek and The Faculty, this was unflattering. Scream 7 had a score less than the running number in the film series. This is a 5.5 out of 10. Kevin Williamson was not the first to put a bunch of teenage characters under the threat of a serial killer or other horrifying nemesis, but his influence could still be felt 30 years on. Corin Hardy's Whistle, from a screenplay written by Owen Egerton, was one of those movies with a group of teenagers facing an unknown ancient threat in the form of an Aztec death whistle that summoned a soul collector. In the prologue, a high school basketball team ace made a match-winning buzzer beater, but it came with a price. Apparently he had blown the death whistle who came to claim his life. A transfer student by the pretentious name of Chrysanthemum came to join her cousin, Rel, in this said high school. On her first day in school, she opened her assigned locker. The cursed death whistle made its inauspicious appearance. Chris, Rel, and a group of students who were caught with their shenanigans by a teacher who had sent them to detention on Chris' first day in the school. Hey, didn't I seen that storyline before? By the way, the teacher, Mr. Craven, realized that they had unearthed an archaeological windfall, despite one of the students sounding out the sinister inscription which foretold what would happen. The tagline of the movie warned anyone holding on to the death whistle to refrain from blowing it or suffer the gruesome consequences. Mr. Craven compelled to blow it and death ensues. This was before the students snatched the whistle off Craven. The dumb decision the kids collectively made would lead them down the same tragic path as their teacher. Whistle, as many described, was another iteration of Final Destination, especially how the protagonist would try to beat death itself. But there were many elements from other horror features I had seen in recent past. The climactic part with Chris and Ellie trying to cheat death, it had echoes from Smile 2. The part with the characters enjoying themselves in the carnival with the haunted labyrinth reminded me of that awful reboot of Jeepers Creepers known as Reborn. The biggest issue I had with the plot itself was that everything that happened was avoidable. There was no pact made with death to grant a wish whatsoever, it just lured its victim to blow on the whistle. I know dumb young people would do so unconditionally, but what compelled many others to do it? Perhaps it was some unseen force that led to that. The lore behind the death whistle was not written satisfyingly, despite having someone like Michelle Fairley or Lady Starks trying her best to make it sound significant. There were a couple of memorable scares, but some of the kills director Hardy and writer Egerton had come up with were chef's kisses. Sufficiently damaging one's lungs to make it like a chronic stage of lung cancer was one thing. Slowly tearing up someone like he has been hit head-on with a moving rig at full speed, or seeing your body slowly turning into bloody mincemeat by an invisible industrial saw was such ghastly sights I never envisioned to see coming into this movie. Daphne Keane, who played X-23 since she was a kid in Logan and reprised the same role in Deadpool and Wolverine, played our lead character Chris. She had that piercing eyes like a young Christina Ricci, which made her very recognizable, but it was hard to go past that brooding teenager she was destined to be cast in all movies. If she was to continue to be involved in horror movies, I wonder what other types of characters she can assume aside the aloof type like Chris here. The other young cast were fine, but characters were not well written, like the dynamics between the friends were weak, and there was a lack of emotional tatters when the barrage of dangers had come for them. Beside Michelle Fairley, Nick Frost as Mr. Craven was the other notable cast. Director Corin Hardy was well known for making The Nun for the Conjuring Extended Universe, released in 2018. That movie was the highest grossing movie in the Conjuring franchise before the release of Last Ride last year, yet it did not sufficiently elevate the reputation of Corin Hardy, and he had to wait another 7 years before bringing Whistle to film festivals in 2025. Despite the teen plot and inadequate characters development, there was certainly fun watching how the manifestations were not letting them off and putting these victims through the most gruesome kill imaginable that even Art the Clown might shudder at the thought of some of the deaths here. But as compared to Scream 7, I had a better time sitting through Whistle and not have my intelligence insulted with glaring contempt from the filmmakers. Whistle is a solid 7 out of 10 for me. So are you sick of watching horror movies with good-looking young people making stupid decisions and suffering the grievous consequences? If so, please help me by clicking the like button. And if you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. In Johnny Campbell's Cold Storage and Martin Marguerite's Crazy Old Lady, we have old people standing in the limelight, although they had their own roller coaster rides in those movies. I think the likes of Sydney's husband and the Mix Martin twins should have a try to blow the death whistle. They will likely evade death with very little effort.